All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And yeah, this is the information session and panel discussion on the RGD Ultra Bold Awards. Today is an open discussion. We're going to go through a number of different questions and answers with the panel today, and we'll do introductions as well when we get to that point. But yeah, we'll just wait as people come in and join this webinar or information session, and go through the different questions and FYIs about the Ultra Bold Awards. So time permitting, hopefully we can open up, have an open discussion at the end, the last 10 or 15 minutes. And if people have questions as they're watching along, those are more than welcome. You can type them in the questions inside Zoom, and we will try to get to those as we get to the end portion of today's session. So I guess we can go to the next slide, Elizabeth. So yeah, today's agenda is pretty high level. We'll do introductions from everyone, and we'll start, I think, with the judges, and then we'll do finalists. We'll talk about the Ultra Bold Awards overview, who's eligible, who can participate, as well as the entry fees that are associated to the Ultra Bold Awards. Then we'll get into our question and answer session. Like I said, the last 10, 15 minutes can be an open discussion. So I'll just begin with the introduction of myself. Again, my name is Richard Plant, moderator today. I'm a volunteer with the RGD on the Education Committee, and one of the tasks is the Ultra Bold Awards. So today, just happy to be a part of this and join this session and talk with everyone. So Amelia, maybe we can go to you next.
Sure thing. So hello, everyone. My name is Amelia Nash. I use the pronouns she and her. I am currently a full-time graphic designer freelance who specializes in branding and all things brand related. I am also a volunteer with the RGD and sit on the Education Committee this year. I guess we can move into the next slide. Great, thank you. So when it comes to the Ultra Bold Awards, here's a very general overview for everyone. It is RGD's newest awards program that celebrates emerging designers making an impact on the design community and beyond. Entrants will submit 3 examples and designer statements, a written statement in relation to their work, and judges will then evaluate these submissions based on design excellence, community impact, and design effectiveness to select hopefully around the 5 finalists and then 1 Ultra Bold winner. The eligibility for these awards are you have to be 35 years of age or under as of the July 9th deadline, or you can be a provisional RGD member who may be over 35 years old in good standing. You also must be a citizen or resident of Canada. There are entry fees associated with the award. If you are a provisional or certified RGD member, it is free to submit. If you are a junior affiliate or any other type of affiliate member, it is $45 Canadian. Non-members are $95 Canadian. Next slide, please. And then how the timelines work for these submissions. The first stage is general submissions. Submissions opened May 10th and they end on May 9th, 2021, this year, obviously, where you have to submit your entry form, including your designer statement, all your project files, payment confirmation. July 9th, the submissions close at, is it midnight Eastern time? Yeah, so on the nose, 11:59:00 Eastern time. If you are selected to be a finalist, you move into stage 2. Our finalist stage is from early to mid-August. You will be notified by end of August. You must submit a designer statement in the form of a video. You will have to confirm permission to promote your work publicly as well. And then if you are selected as the ultimate Ultra Bold winner from this finalist stage, October, finalists and the winner will be notified of their standings. And then in November, the winner will have the opportunity to accept their award during the RGD's annual Design Thinkers Conference. So that is, in a nutshell, everything that's required of you in regards to submissions, and then what timelines you are going to be expected if you do participate in the awards. Next slide, please. Great. So I'll throw it back to you, Richard.
Thanks, Amelia, for covering that. So yeah, that's a lot of information. And part of today is just to kind of go over some of the questions about the ULTRABOLD Awards. And before we do that, I would like our panelists to introduce themselves as well, just so that we could get an understanding of some of the finalists from last year, as well as some of the judges, get their perspectives today. So I think let's start with Susanna, the judge.
Thank you. Great to be joining you today. And to see you again, Howard. We shared some nice discussion. I am in Stockholm, but I am Canadian from the beginning. I grew up in Vancouver and I did my undergraduate there in design. And then I studied in Switzerland under Paul Rand and Armin Hoffman through the Yale program. And then sort of from there made my way back to New York, and then I ended up in Stockholm. So I've been working in branding, design, art direction, and all forms of this lovely profession we're in for probably 25 years now. So interesting perspective maybe between Canadian roots and European. Most of my professional career has been based out of Stockholm. So so I'm happy to be a part of this and have a look at all the great work that's been developing in Canada, and to reconnect with my Canadian colleagues and roots, and a real pleasure to be here. Currently, I am running a design office, a creative director, very much involved in the design of the studio in Stockholm. So we are a branding and design office here, working with all aspects. So very pleased to join you today.
Thank you. Howard, how about you go next?
I was stopped by Paul Rand, and I can't seem to move past that. So I will. My history is not as maybe storied as Susanna's. Yet I've been in the industry for almost 40 years. So you can think about that whatever you want, but I'm still super excited and stoked about it. I currently work for DDB Canada, which is a marketing communications branding agency. It's got a global presence. I'm VP of design in the Edmonton office, where I've been working for over 14 years, but this is my second coming. I was there before, and I did a stint client side with a tech company. So I've got experience working on my own. So as an entrepreneur in the private sector within a school board. So I have in-house experience too. And then working agency side and client side. So I think I bring to this panel, or the panel last year, the judging panel, quite a broad perspective. And I'm excited to share some of my thoughts with this team.
Thanks, Howard. Loren, how about, yeah, you go ahead now.
Hi, my name is Loren Aytona Arena. I've been in graphic design for a little over 10 years, so quite a ways to still go in my career. I have a variety of experience. I started off in freelance and then moved into in-house for a really busy consulting firm. So it was kind of almost standing in between those two worlds of agency and in-house, and then moved on as a formal in-house designer for a healthcare organization. And then now I'm back in the creative studio. I specialize in information and editorial driven design. I love narratives, I love content, and I do that for print and digital and built space. I really love environmental design, like my hero, Paula Scher. And I currently work in a creative studio called Cygnus Design Group, where I'm a project designer designing all sorts of environments and experiential design. and an ULTRABOLD Awards finalist. So happy to be here and share my experience.
Thanks, Loren. And Jay, off to you.
Hey everyone, I am Jay Wall. I'm an RGD. I'm coming to you from beautiful downtown Toronto in Treaty 13 territory. I'm here, I guess I was a RGD winner last year. Great to be a finalist alongside Loren. Awesome to have you here as well. So that's kind of the perspective I'm sharing today. In terms of a little bit more of my career, I've basically spent the last decade running Rally, which is a design studio dedicated to social change. So we've been working design, communications, lots of branding and publications, campaigns around the world, especially here in Canada, with lots of nonprofits, government clients, and purpose-driven businesses. So yeah, I guess I'll leave it there for now.
Thanks. All right, so I think we can get into our first question, and we'll start with, what did you guys find made the ULTRABOLD Awards stand out? How was it different when compared to other designer awards out there? And yeah, just kind of curious, both the judge's perspective as well as the finalists.
I'm happy to start. I think what made it stand out immediately when I was reading the description is the call for emerging designers. And as someone that has applied for awards, grants, scholarships, while I really admire the eventual shortlisted winners in these 25 under 25s and 30 under 30s, I have often struggled to identify with the people that were selected for these awards as someone who has, hasn't gotten that senior in my title yet, or, hasn't, found my own business. And while all those achievements are very well and good, I often wondered, like, well, maybe that award is not for me because I haven't had that meteoric rise in my career that some of these awards seem to, I guess the criteria, that seems to be it. So I found ULTRABOLD to be really inviting to where I was currently at in my career. And that made me excited to apply, because, applying for these awards can be a really anxiety inducing experience at times, but I felt like the award and I were in the same place, and that's what made me decide to go for it.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me too. I mean, for one, I loved how this focused on celebrating designer space in Canada, and like younger generations of designers without necessarily being like young blood type awards, like fresh out of school. Not that, like, you totally can be as well, but for kind of where I was at in my career, 10 plus years into my career, and I feel like I have like a story to tell and sort of a perspective on design. One really important piece for me that drew me in was it wasn't just about your portfolio. So certainly, like, yeah, portfolio is an important component of the work, but it's not like you're just getting judged based on eye candy. It's like you're being considered by the judges as more holistically as a designer. What is the perspective you're bringing? What is the impact you're having in the community, as well as, like, what are your standards in graphic design as well? Sort of, I liked the holisticness of that and felt that, I had maybe a chance to be considered, but also like that I felt like I could respond to that as a brief and answer that question.
I can also contribute. I think I've, as you may have, Howard, over the years judged many design competitions, and I felt that it was a really surprisingly fresh way to set up an award and bring in this criteria of sort of social good and consciousness, because typically design awards are, you have the design excellence and the relevance and maybe the idea, the execution, but very rarely do you bring in this sort of impact, community impact into the criteria. And that was very interesting, I think, because you want to promote great design, and you want to make sure that those that are put in the spotlight here are really excellent. But at the same time, you have to judge that against the contribution and sort of back and forth again, because you don't want to be purely political, and the work has to have merit on a creative and an idea height as well. So it's that was very interesting. And I think, as you both have also pointed out, that it wasn't just the work or the projects you're judging here. You're really looking at the designer themselves and their body of work and the context in which they sit, their background, and their ambition. And I think that there is a kind of awakening going on, certainly. And I think that as we are creating content more and more as designers, we're also need to be made responsible for what we're putting out there. And I think that it's an exciting time for that. So I think that all of us need to be mindful that, you know, the work that we're creating should in some way have meaning and add to sort of a higher purpose, or that we can make an influence, even if it's small, and we can be a conduit between our clients and the public. And by having an award like this, it really hopes to raise awareness and curiosity and enthusiasm among creatives. That is actually an aspect that they can maybe have some influence over. So that was what sat with me. I was really surprised and sort of delighted to participate and to promote the both of you and other finalists that really were deserving of acknowledgement.
I don't think I can add anything to round out what was already said, and I agree. Kudos for to the RGD for having an awards show that that goes beyond just the visual aspect of it, and I liked the way that Jay articulated it by that it was holistic. What I will point out to potential entrants in the membership, that I think this is a really valuable opportunity to challenge yourself, because you know, with most award shows, when you enter, you look at merely your output and you judge to go, you know, is this worthy, or will this stand the test of something visual? And I think what these awards do is it challenges you to look back in the body of work you've done in the year and see if you have the courage to submit something, but then also it challenges you to think about why you're doing the work that you're doing. And I would probably be putting words in the entrants' mouths by saying that it may make you rethink your approach to design. It may make you think about in a deeper way why you approach the work that you did in the way that you did, and because you have to articulate it now in your entry, and you also have to articulate your philosophy and your approach in a video. And I think those are all what an amazing experience for people that made it into the finalists, but also even if you just enter, it's a great opportunity to rethink of why and how you do the work that you do.
All right, that's great. Thank you. I think we can go on to the next question there. So again, as a judge, what are the things that you're looking for when people are submitting to something like the ULTRABOLD Awards? What stands out in your mind?
Do you want to go first, Loren, this time?
Sure. You know, beyond I loved reading how the entrants articulated their approach, because we had the nature of these awards is quite different than other award shows out there, where it's merely judged on a short paragraph of explaining the work, and it really is the submission, whether it's a case study or some documentation. This one got into some thinking, and but beyond reading through the materials, I think I still look for visual impact. Number one is first impressions. That's how people are going to experience the work that you do, the solutions you have, whether it's environmental, print, digital, whatever your solution is, there's no explanation behind it. It's going to live out in the world. And that's how I approach when I look at it. Does it arrest me? What's the first impression I get? It has to have some type of impact on me. When I understand the underlying motives or strategy, creative approach, it all helps to inform and give me more of a 360 experience. But the first thing I look for is visual impact, because this is about visual communication.
Yeah, I would, of course, agree with Howard. What I could add here is, and this maybe comes in the next question a little bit as well, but that this is really a presentation of you as the designer as much as it is these individual projects. So as Howard said, we really have to promote and excellent design and design that is effective. So this excellence, effectiveness, and relevance is, of course, super important. But how it's packaged is also important, I think, as well. And how you talk about your work and how you talk about the idea. And I think that last year we had a lot of very ambitious writing from all the entrants, and it was lovely. And it took a long time to go through it, though. So I would say really try to be succinct about your writing and really sum up who you are and what you're doing as a designer. And when it comes to the writing about your different projects, just keep in mind that the judges have a lot of material to go through. So the more to the point and succinct you can be, you'll make it easier for the judges, and it's also a little tougher to sort of to edit it down to the essentials. And then how you present the work is also counts, because as judges we can sort of see through the cracks, and we're looking for weakness. So even if you have fantastic work, you might not be presenting it, or you didn't have time to put it together. That counts. You can sort of say, is this holding up all the way through? So really, you know, think of it as a complete package. You're presenting yourself as well. And I think the format this year is going to be a bit different than it was last year. So hopefully everyone won't need to be that ambitious with the writing this year anyway. There's rules, I think, about maximum word count. So, yeah.
Yeah, so just for some backstory for everyone there, a lot of the submissions, we said 500 words, and people literally stuck to that to the letter. And there was a lot of reading for the judges. And yeah, it doesn't have to be, you could go up to, well, I think we went down to 250 this year, right, Amelia? But again, if you could do it in less words, less writing to get your point across, that is totally fine, I guess. Yeah. That's great. Thanks, guys. Amelia, you want to take the next question there?
For sure. So a question for our finalists. How did you prepare your submission, and do you have any tips or best practices that you came across and that you would like to share? Any takers? Jay, Loren?
I'll jump in.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
So, I mean, I have some more philosophical thoughts for like a later question, but like this one's like pretty practical. Just like literally what are the steps that I did? Because I find like when you're busy and there's a big task like this, it helps just like to break it down into some like manageable steps, which is what I did. So just started by like reviewing the criteria and like reflecting, like, is this something I want to go for? Is it, you know, is it worth my time? And I ultimately decided yes, and decided to apply. Then I know I wanted some accountability, so I reached out to one of my collaborators, Mustawi Raj, who actually ended up becoming one of the other finalists. So I reached out to Mustawi and was like, hey, I think you'd be a good fit for this. You should apply. Also, can we just like help each other out? So we weren't like working on each other's applications, but we were just like kind of like sounding boards for like, as we're like reflecting on like, who am I as a designer, and like, what is the perspective that I bring? And we, you know, knew each other well enough to be able to like give some honest perspective on that. And then like, it was a fair bit of work. So just like broke it up into steps that I could chip away at, whether I was more in the mood for like writing or for gathering images and assembling my content. Probably the biggest thing was spending time reflecting on what I'd write for my designer statement, which I'll get to in a later question, but just like that was a big piece of it for me. And then I made a short list of the projects from my portfolio that I might consider putting in, and ultimately like narrowed it down. I wanted something that like a range of projects that would show like the diversity of my portfolio, but also speak to the statement that I was trying to make in my designer statement, that would support that. And then technically I just put everything in Google Docs, drafted it there before moving into the submission forms, just to be sure. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I pretty much followed a very similar process. I personally do not like applying for these things within the form format. I always get very skittish about saving and content, and I just don't like typing in forms. So I actually copy and pasted all the long form questions onto a Google Doc, so I never had to worry about saving. And it would also do any sort of spell check and grammatical checks along the way. Of course, you want to proofread everything at the end. Do not count out the time it takes to prepare your visuals to be able to land that graphic impact. Submitting visuals for an award is very different than submitting final JPEGs to a client. You want to be able to show your work in the wild, so to speak. So you're not just sending that image of the Instagram post you made. Take the time to actually put it in a mock-up, show what it looks like on Instagram. You can find a lot of really excellent Photoshop mock-ups that you can actually place any sort of social media images, environmental images, book publication images into spreads and whatnot. And that could really help land that visual first impression of like, wow, what a beautiful publication, as opposed to, you don't even have the option to attach a PDF, I think. I think everything has to be in JPEG. So especially for all you editorial designers out there, if everything has to be in a JPEG, how are you going to be able to show those spreads effectively? So, you know, dedicate the time to writing the content, but also do set aside the time to think about the visual narrative that you want to show when you put together your award submission.
Those are great tips.
Yeah, those are great. Is it fair to say then it took a little longer than you initially expected or imagined it would when you were filling these out?
I would say there was some time, perhaps too much time dedicated to thinking about whether I should apply. If you're here in this webinar, apply. So let's get that out of the way, and just go for it. And then I would say that it took about a solid week of, I would write out one project submission in one go, and then I would just put it away, and then I would come back to it. Just take the time away from your project submissions. As for the visuals, once I was able to find mock-ups that I felt would best display my work, it was just the actual just like grind of putting those images right into the mock-ups, and that took a couple days as well. And then just having just one set block of time reviewing your submission as a whole, as Jay mentioned, tying the story of who you are as a designer and making sure that appears in all your separate pieces. So I would say, and the week was a grind too. I would give yourself at least a minimum of a week to put this together, ideally too. But move through the thought process of whether or not you should apply. You should apply. So skip that step.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Loren.
All right, so I guess kind of following up to that question for our finalists as well is, what was the hardest part about putting together your submission? So I know you touched on that a little bit, Loren, about making that decision whether to actually apply or not, but what else did you guys come across when you were putting together your submission that you found maybe a little bit challenging or difficult?
I think the first hardest part was deciding that I should apply. The second hardest part was narrowing down the projects that I felt not only reflected my design expertise, but also told the best story of who I was as an emerging designer, and the impact that I wanted to have and that my work was having. It's been repeated for a reason in this webinar already that this award is as very much about you as it is about your work. And that I will say that I had so you have 3 project submissions and I had around 5. And there were projects in which the end outcome was perhaps more designerly, like I had a bigger leadership role in it, like I was the creative director in it. The end product reflected the design trends of the day. But then I had other projects that I was like, this is just a better story. I actually had a choice between 2 projects for my 3rd submission. One was kind of more that like, oh, this is a really great piece, I guess, for an employer to show that I'm current and with it. But I had another project where it's like, and I wasn't the art director. I was one of many designers on the team actually, but I felt like it was more authentic to who I was as a designer, the type of worker I wanted to be and wanted to show. It just had better conflict, it had better resolution. And the end product like may not have been as designerly as the other one, but I decided to place my chips on that one. I just felt that it was the better story. It was more true to who I was and the type of work I wanted to do. So I think being able to narrow down those projects and tell that story was the most difficult, but also the most rewarding part of putting together this submission.
It's a really interesting like reflection on like thinking about your audience. You're obviously a smart designer, Loren. Thinking about who's going to be reviewing it and like this is different from a job application. For me, like the hardest, but also the most fulfilling and beautiful part of the process was the designer statement. Like typically when you're submitting award entries, you're not asked to speak holistically about like what are you trying to do with your career and what sort of impact are you hoping to have in the community. And I think that's part of like what makes ULTRABOLD so special. It looks at you as a multifaceted professional, not just reduced to pixels in your portfolio. And so for me, like reflecting on the designer statement ended up being really meaningful because it forced me to step back from the details of my like, day-to-day projects and kind of like zoom out and reflect a bit, like thinking about the last 10 to 15 years of my life, like from my early days as a design activist to like starting the studio that eventually became Rally, and like how awesome my team is, like that, these aren't anything in my portfolio wasn't just about me, it was like our team together. Just reflecting on that, and then also kind of like seeing that trajectory helped me to think about how do I want to keep evolving in the future.
Sorry.
And so it was basically an invitation to reflect on who I am as a person, as a design professional beyond the portfolio itself. Even things like teaching or mentoring, you're doing advocacy and running a business. Like there's all these like peripheral aspects of being a design professional that aren't just about like the projects that you create. And so there was space for that. So I actually, to give you a little like peek into like what I wrote in my designer statement, I ended up framing my statement around 3 key themes. So one was advancing social change, essentially like the work that we do at Rally. One was like I used the metaphor of building bridges, so speaking to like how I'm seeking to use design to build bridges with other sectors, like outside of the typical like areas that might use design. For example, using communications to advance democratic participation or to reduce barriers to participation in creating public policy or urban planning. Building bridges between countries, like our partnerships with landscape architecture firms in the States. And then my last point was the metaphor of planting seeds. So thinking about my role as a mentor, as a teacher, as an advocate, essentially supporting the next generation of designers. So I think like those 3 pieces together were really like the thread that I pulled together to speak to who I am.
Thanks, Jay.
I just wanted to really, really quickly add, and thank you, Jay, that was great. Start thinking about now of the different ways impact can be expressed as one of the key words in the public in this award. Impact can and should be the effect of your work upon the larger community, your publics, your clients. But think about the internal impact that you're having with your colleagues, with your vendors, with the design teams you work for. And I am really passionate about production and end stage designers just getting their shine. As someone who all of my greatest design lessons were working at the tail end of that design phase, not so much the conceptualization, but the execution of it. So if you're here and you're like, I really want to apply, but I've never been an art director, or I haven't been a project leader, you are still making impact by getting that design out the door, and think about interpreting impact that way. Because there's many ways that you can interpret impact, I think.
All right, so as a judge then, what aspects should be avoided when someone's going to submit their 3 projects for this award?
I can start. I think I touched on it in the last point as well. I think one thing was being succinct about your designer statement and your, so to speak, argument or rationale for your work. And I think that Jay, when you talked about how considered you put together your presentation, it's also a good opportunity for young designers to define their beliefs and refine that statement. And even if as you say, some may be apprehensive to apply, the actual process of application, you will learn probably a lot, and will be a very good experience to do, just to help define. It's like, as you talk about, Jay, with teaching or mentoring of things, it helps you maybe sharpen up what your beliefs really are, because you have to verbalize them. So think of it as a fun exercise for yourself, and try to be on the other side of that to understand, is it just really yada yada, or am I really coming to my point? Am I articulating this in a good way, making my point? I think that Richard, we talked about that, and now we're sort of, with the age being 35, we're emerging designers, but with all hopes, they're designers that have had experience in the professional world. We're not talking about students here. We're talking about designers that have worked with clients. They have real projects to show. I think we mentioned that maybe 1 of 3 of those projects could be a self-initiated project that is sort of client-free. And I would say to reserve that for like exceptional work, where you really feel that this has something, but if that's a chance to sort of boost up your portfolio, go for it. But those projects that are really meeting a client's demand in a very relevant way and making impact are going to be maybe more considered by the judges, I would think. And then the actual presentation itself, as I said before, I think is important. But I think that you can think of when I go into a jury and I look at work, I try to, as Howard pointed out, it's the first initial impact. It's sort of the heart. What makes you happy? As a judge, often it's what makes you feel like, damn it, I wish I thought of that. If you get that feeling, it sticks. Like, damn it, that was a good idea. And then you get into the writing, and you get into the rationale, and you get into the relevance. And so you sort of go into the head. And you think it, and you talk it through with the other juries. And then I think at the end, you have to come back to the heart at the end again. Okay, it got me, and it's really smart, and it's great, and I love it. I mean, that you have to come full circle as a judge. So think about that with your entries. They can't just be, it can't just be aesthetic merit. It can't just be wallpaper. It can't just be, it has to have substance, it has to have idea, it has to have relevance, and it has to have that effectiveness. plus that little special ultra bold when it comes to advancing social change and making a difference in the world. So it's a tough thing, but I think it's absolutely a great way to raise this point and put it into discussion, and encourage younger designers to start to have this in the back of their mind with every project that they do. They might be able to make a change.
I think, again, I don't know how much more I can add to, because to what Susanna just said, because I think that was very comprehensive of response. One thing that I will say about my experience judging the award was that I struggled with a bias that I had when I was looking at some of the entries, where I found they were heavily weighted towards one type of project. And when I encountered some of the other entries that had more breadth, it was hard to assess them equally. So these aren't the type of awards where you're judging a category. We're as judges, the judges are judging a holistic design submission, and some designers, because they work in a studio or have a business that has a breadth of work, will have a very different submission than somebody that works in branding, or that may use illustration for all of their solutions. And that, I will say, was the greatest challenge I had, to weight or handicap each of the entries so that I could assess them properly, because it would be unfair to filter the assessment through the same lens for everybody. And everybody also has a different degree of work experience, because you could clearly see in the portfolio submission and in the writing who had a few years experience from who had a decade or more of experience. So all those were big challenges that the judges had to face. And so one of the things to underscore what was said earlier is to be really succinct and clear about what your problem was and what your solution is. Don't hide that in prose within a paragraph. I will much rather read something that is really short but to the point, that helps me understand why you solve something in your unique way, and why your solution was relevant or appropriate for the project. So that would be the biggest thing. And another valuable thing that I found, and I think Susanna would agree, is that we had a judges meeting after the initial judging phase, where we submitted our rankings. And that was very valuable to have a discussion. And I would hope that the RGD would consider having that again, but not I think it was because we had a lot of similarity, where there was similar points awarded. And then that discussion helped us to see how each of the judges approached their evaluation, and how they selected and why they selected the specific projects and designers to have higher numbers or lower numbers.
Exactly, Howard. To just to underscore that, Richard, I don't know what the format is this year, but that dialogue is really important, I think, for the judges, to hear each other, to be sympathetic to, if someone's picked up on someone's work for some reason and someone has missed that, at least to get it all on the table and say, hey, wait a minute, but this person is doing this, and it's relevant and interesting for this reason that maybe I'd overlooked or someone else had overlooked, and vice versa. And you can almost turn around your perspective on a work after having a dialogue about it. So I think that as a judging, it's very important to do sort of in isolation, but it's also good to then have a discussion and then maybe go back into you know, okay, this sort of heart, mind, heart sort of process again. And it was helpful for us when we had the chance to have a dialogue. So I hope that the judges this year get the same opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it can be very subjective. And then when you're looking through all these different submissions, one really resonates and something was missed, like you're saying, it's a great opportunity for all the judges to kind of just take another look at those kind of submissions and make sure everyone's, I guess, gets a fair look at that. So yeah, no, that's a great point. And something that I think we plan to carry forward this year too. So I do want to watch our time here. We should maybe get to the next question. We are getting near the end too, but yeah. So yeah, the final. Oh, go ahead, Amelia. Yeah, you
the
take this.
Spirit of being succinct, because we only have a couple minutes left before Q&A. The last two questions, if you can all please be very succinct and brief with your responses, and then we'll open up the floor for the last 10 minutes to Q&A. That's all I needed to say. But with that, for the finalists again, did you have any concerns that popped up after you made your submission?
I had some questions.
Through?
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Loren.
Yeah, I mean, always the biggest concern is, did this go through? So just on the RGD's end, I appreciated getting that confirmation email at the end saying like, yes, it did go through. So make sure that happens for the applicants. That's a great peace of mind. And just making sure that if you are, if your visuals are linked, I believe there's an option to either upload your visuals or link your visuals to a website. Make sure that link is not broken. Ensure that it's working. Test that link before you submit. And then just don't think about it. Just leave it out of your head. You applied. It's done.
I had a few questions like come up like during the application process and then afterwards as well. And just want to say, like, I reached out to RGD and they're always super helpful and responsive. So don't be shy to reach out to them with questions. And I know that Amelia and Richard and other RGD volunteers have been working hard all year to like make ULTRABOLD even better this year. So I'm sure it's going to be like a pretty seamless user experience.
Great, thank you guys. Next question. And final question. So we're almost right on time, which is great. This is a question for everyone. What did you come away with from participating in the ULTRABOLD Awards, and how did you grow as a professional from this experience?
I'm happy to start. So on a bit of a personal note, I put together my ULTRABOLD application and submitted it, just finishing up the first trimester of my first baby. So there was a lot of feelings. Lockdown just happened. There was a lot of emotions and feelings in putting together this award. And I think being able to do so when the circumstances around me were just felt so uncertain for so many reasons, and culminating in celebrating as a finalist along with Jay and everybody else. And 2 weeks later, I gave birth. It was very cool and very surreal to be able to go through this and know that there's such a long runway ahead for me in my design career. And the most important part is to use these awards, yes, for the challenge of pursuing a win, but also taking time to reflect upon your work and reflect upon your design practice, something that you can continue doing as your life changes as well.
As someone who's like never won one of those like young blood type awards, I was really like encouraged and like validated by like this experience of just like when I was selected as a finalist, I was like, okay, that's amazing. I didn't expect anything beyond that. Like just to be in the company of Loren, Mustawi, Lynn, Logan, Paul, Ronald, like connect with these great designers across Canada. Like a little high five group was a lot of fun. And then certainly the unexpected news of being named the winner was wonderful. And I think like I said earlier, just the reflection process of writing my design statement has been important for me, sort of considering what the next chapters of my life might look like.
I'll jump in. I came away with a better understanding of RGD as a professional association. Actually, I'm more familiar with GDC, especially because I'm from down west, from the West Coast, and I'm a new member of RGD, a proud new member as a result.
So it's an initial plan for how.
I can just shortly add that I was very proud of the RGD for initiating this award. And I thought it was a very progressive stand and made me proud to sort of be a Canadian way over here in Stockholm and reconnect with my Canadian colleagues and professional colleagues and see the emerging designers and emerging talent in Canada that I think has been made tremendous strides in the last 10 years. So I just came away feeling really, really proud actually of Canadian design and as well as this initiative for social change and the awareness and the inclusion and all of these aspects that are so true to sort of being a Canadian. And so I really thank you for inviting me and for having the chance to meet Howard and the other judges and to be able to promote this young emerging talent that is such a high caliber. And so I hope then that this award will take off.
Thank you.
I think that brings us to the open questions. I do see one that has come through, and it's for the judges. Are judges picking a top 3, and then are they aggregating that and giving each applicant a score, and then going to the next round based on that number? That's the question.
I think we gave a top 10, didn't we, Howard?
Yes, it was ranked by the ranking was with a grading system. So there was points assigned for different aspects, and then the RGD committee took the numbers and had a top 10, but then the judges had a discussion around the top 10 when there was a tie.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
So we had to boil it down from there. Oh.
Okay, great. I see a few more questions have come in. One's from Paul. He was a finalist last year, and his question is, can finalists from last year apply again this year? So the answer is if you were a finalist, a 1-year break. So provided that you still fit in as a provisional, just take a year in between, and then you can apply. You can even use some of the same submissions if you want in your submissions. Yeah, just a year break in between. So.
And winners cannot win again. So finalists get a 1-year hiatus before they're able to apply to the ULTRABOLD Awards again. Winners, it's a one and done experience. Anyone else, if you submitted last year and did not make the finalist or winning stage, you can apply again this year with no problem, no break, no hiatus. And I think that answers maybe the next question. So then our next question is, if you've done a project for multiple years, i.e. one creative a year, do they count as one project, or would you recommend only submitting a single year's project? I think you might be better to answer that question, Richard.
Yeah, okay. I think having that diversity of submissions, you should really consider that, kind of based on what the judges said when they were saying what to avoid. So I wouldn't do that. I would count that as a single project and then two other different projects. altogether?
I may have some insight into that question. One of my
Okay.
submissions was a 5-year project,
Oh, okay.
in which the creatives from that submission, I think, were released like a year and a half apart. And that was all under the banner of one submission. I just figured it was one museum, and it didn't seem effective to extrapolate all three as different as the creatives were for each of those phases. So I did one submission.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Any other, I don't see any other questions there.
We've got 2 minutes left, so if anyone has any final questions, now would be the time to throw them in the chat or in our Q&A panel. If not, we can maybe throw it back to all panelists and ask if there's anything further you'd like to add to, round out and finalize this webinar.
I have a suggestion for people considering submissions. I mean, you are a member of a professional association. I think it would, if you are second guessing or if you want another opinion, one thing that we do in our office around work is we have a peer review process, and it's the same if you work in a setting where you happen to have coworkers. I think it would be very beneficial for you to get some feedback on how you can improve your submission, or even a point of view on the work that you're submitting, because it is hard to select something and narrow it down, because you are personally attached to the work that you're doing, and you have a very different perspective of it. If you sweat it over a project and it's very near and dear to you, you're not objectively viewing how other people would experience it. And so that would be a beneficial thing to consider, is getting some criticism or some feedback.
That's great. Thank you. We do have one more question that just came in. The question is, if you started design later in life, can you apply as a 30-something with only a year or two of experience? Yes, as long as you meet the age eligibility requirements. So as long as you're 35 years and younger, or if you're older than 35, you are a provisional RGD in good standing. But yes, absolutely, which I think was answered throughout this webinar. That's the beauty of this awards, is that you don't have to be, pigeonholed into a certain type of category, young guns, etc. As long as you're 35 and under, any design experience is encouraged to apply.
I just wanted to add really quickly, and this is a good design practice in general, start gathering the metrics of how your work has that community impact. I was really fortunate in one of my submissions to work alongside an excellent communications and marketing team that were all about the metrics in how their digital and print pieces were being received in the world, and was able to get in touch with them and get some hard numbers on that, because I like to think that that matters when you're talking about community impact. You can actually demonstrate it in those kind of ways. So, and that's just a good design practice in general. You want to see how your work has impact. So keep in touch with your colleagues, keep in touch with your clients, and ask those follow-up questions of how that project went and the type of work, your type of impact your work is having.
All right, that's great. And we are at our time. Unless there's any other questions, I think we're good. I just want to thank everyone again, Howard, Susanna, Loren, Jay, Amelia, and Elizabeth. You're in the background, I know, just for participating in this and kind of bringing some more visibility to the ULTRABOLD Awards. Again, I'll just close on saying July 9th is the submission closing date. There's some pretty awesome prizes. All finalists will get $1,000 cash, free membership for Provisional, or if you become an RGD, for 2 years, free attendance to Design Thinkers for 2 years, and recognition across the RGD. So those would be the finalists, and there will be 4 of them, well, 5 finalists and 1 winner from the finalists. And the winner, again, would get 5 years RGD membership, 5 years attendance to Design Thinkers, Of course, the spotlight at Design Thinkers, and again, a $1,000 cash prize. So yeah, if there's other questions, you're on the fence, you're not sure about participating, get out there, do that, just like Loren has said. And questions after, you can email the RGD info@rgd.ca, and we would be happy to answer those for you. So again, just thank you to everyone and their time today and participating. And until next time, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Glad to be
all.
there. See ya.